Ethan, you were a corporate evangelist. I don't know if the term was really fully in vogue or clearly understood, but let's just start back with basics. A Microsoft school bus that you took on the road. I mean, that is old school evangelism, my friend. Let's just start there and let's delve into evangelism, corporate evangelism, what it looks like, and some courageous decisions around it.
Love it. Yeah. Thanks for taking me straight back. That was probably my first professional job out of school. I had some that I wouldn't really qualify that way. Prior to that one, I kind of titled it in retrospect. I didn't really have a title at the time, but I had been introduced to a woman in the central region of Microsoft in the mid 90s who had convinced her colleagues up and down the central region from Toronto and Ottawa all the way down to Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, and a whole bunch of spots in between that kind of stripe through the center of the US and Canada to turn a school bus into a mobile computer lab and have someone drive it around to, I think I was in 26 cities in a year.
Yeah.
And it really was this evangelism play. I had nothing to sell. It was simply about creating awareness and exposure and excitement in kind of a remarkable way to the breadth of product offerings that Microsoft had at the time. So I had some kids games, like educational games. Some folks might be familiar with the Magic School Bus brand. It was like a TV show and a number of other kind of spin out things, but very educational in approach. Some sillier, more fun games like Monster Truck Racing. On the other end, of course, I had all the, productivity software, Excel and Word and PowerPoint and all that stuff. And then some of the in-between things. At the time, they were still serving an encyclopedia on CD-ROM. So I had the Encarta encyclopedia and some other stuff too.
I remember the Encarta. Yeah, right.
Yeah. So it was really, and it was fascinating. There's so many unique challenges in piloting a school bus, almost exclusively solo, city to city. And, just driving a 70-seat school bus through Houston, Texas, without Google Maps to tell you where to go is a thing.
Look, massive amount of respect. I mean, we want to talk about somebody who's, you earned your credibility, you've got the authority in the space. What attracted you to evangelism? And do you think that you were a natural evangelist, or do you think that you had an aptitude for it, or were the things that, hey, I just took on the role and learned as I went, or maybe a combo of both?
It's both and, but I definitely think when reflecting now, so I've been titled Chief Evangelist at BombBomb for almost 4 years. I got there kind of by accident. If we want to get into details on that, we can. But one of the reasons that Steve Passanelli, my co-author on 2 books, longtime friend and our chief marketing officer and my boss at BombBomb, opened up that opportunity for me, which I did regard as a little bit of a courageous decision to take.
Yeah, right.
I think what he saw in me and in my strengths is something that I had been aware of before, but this opportunity to make it formal was a little bit of a surprise to me, but I think is exactly where I should be. And for folks that are wondering, evangelism in general, so Microsoft, Amazon, a bunch of companies have had teams of Google have had teams of evangelists for years. Right. And this is typically a product evangelist or a technology evangelist. A chief evangelist would be more for Guy Kawasaki is probably the first popular chief evangelist. Yeah. He was a product evangelist at Apple, got frustrated, left to do his own thing, and then got recruited back by Steve Jobs to be their first and historically now only chief evangelist at Apple ever. And so a chief evangelist is somewhere in between those. And it really is about evangelizing the problem more than the product. So it's not a traditional sales role. Yeah, it's not a traditional marketing role. It plays across all the teams. It's just as much or more outwardly facing as it is internal and operationally focused. It's definitely more externally facing than it is operationally focused. So it's this really unique role that I'd be happy to talk with anyone about whether or not you need one. I think in a lot of cases, if you are innovating, then you do need to be evangelizing, and it's a unique role. And I do feel uniquely prepared at this point in my career that it's a really good fit for me.
No, I love that, and I can tell that. And you bring so much passion to it. I love where you went. I do want to touch on BombBomb, but I also, before we get there, want to talk a little bit about the duality of the role. Because on the one hand, you're dealing with skepticism in the marketplace, I'd also imagine at times you might be dealing with skepticism internally. What is this role? Why do we need you? What are you doing? Do you have numbers you're trying? You see what I'm saying? There's ambiguity towards it. But when does that switch? What creates an organization, or the folks in the organization say, I totally get it, and you're adding a lot of value?
That is a really good observation and a really good question. It really varies by individual. I've had dozens of conversations with evangelists or people thinking about installing evangelism over the past few years, and I actually started a podcast around it. I've recorded, I think, 13 or 14 episodes. I've only released a couple. So there's a great deal of variability, not just in how much time do you spend focused outside the organization versus inside the organization? How do you think about that? How do you approach it? But even in what the role means. Right. And so one thing I have observed through all of my conversations is that a high trust environment and high trust in you as an individual is critical. I think it is at some level, like a lot of our activities in our businesses. It's a little bit of a leap of faith. You do know intuitively that it's a net benefit to the organization, but direct attribution to revenue can be very hard to do. And it always has been, no matter the activity. And there's some things that are like, if you're running a very transactional business, it's easier to do. Click the ad, read the page, bought the thing, right? But most of us, if you're listening to a podcast like this, or, anyone operating more in a B2B type of environment, it's much, much more complex than that. And even in a B2C environment, it can be too. And so revenue attribution is always a challenge, but it's especially a challenge here too. So even when you are in a high trust environment and the CEO or the COO or somebody else that advocates for and supports someone's transition into a chief evangelist role, or even to launch an evangelism program, that trust is critical to it, but you still need to win over other people. Yeah. And the number one way to win over other people is just like it is for anyone. Help them be more successful themselves. And so I do engage with our customer success managers or account managers to help them strategize an account, or even participate directly with people in that account for retention and expansion purposes. I am working with some of our account executives or our business development people to strategize an account or engage with an account pre-purchase. So now, could any of those people say, as a chief evangelist, Ethan does X, Y, and Z? Not really, but would they say, Ethan, as our chief evangelist, is helpful to me in thinking about our work differently and helping generate revenue? Yeah, I think most of them would. And so I think it's the same way for anyone that goes down this road. I would also say that qualitative success is helpful for, it's easy for people who have a highly quantifiable, it's either their activities and the results of that activities are quantifiable, and therefore we can just correlate the activity with the outcome and say that, you're on pace or you're not on pace, or you were successful or you were not successful. I think people short of that should be paying attention to qualitative feedback, not just the quantitative, easy to measure stuff like $150,000 in new revenue. It's the nature of the replies and responses, the feedback that you're getting, perhaps softer signs like the acceleration of a conversation, faster than average deal closes, or whatever the case may be. A number of the evangelists I've talked with will screenshot direct messages. They'll screenshot chats in live recordings. They'll screenshot things that validate that the way that they're engaging with people and the way that they're helping people with their problems, and not just selling the product or service per se, or just selling the brand name per se, they'll keep that kind of on file. And because you do need to be a little bit self-promotional to the degree that people don't understand the work that you do. And for a lot of personality types, including my own, that sucks. Like, I do not like doing that. I'm not self-promotional by nature. Right. So I'm not as good at it as some of the other people I've talked with, but those are a few ideas. I think last thing I'll share is that one of the episodes I have released with Jen Allen from Challenger, which is the training arm of kind of the Challenger sale, Challenger customer movement. When she started as chief evangelist at Challenger, she had split her time 50-50 internal, external. And then has since, over the course of about a year, shifted to 80-20 external to internal. And so, point being there, she was a lot more internally focused in the beginning to help people out, to advanced point of view and perspective to gauge where people were, to make sure people understood what the mission that she was on and how she could help them directly and indirectly. And so anyone starting something new that doesn't feel like they're on this firm foundation of clarity and trust internally, you're not going to be in a good position to go out on that limb and operate externally. I would encourage folks to take a similar approach to Jen, to the degree that you're doing something new and different, whether it's evangelism or something else.
I love where you're going with this. What's coming to mind for me as you're talking, two things I want to get your feedback and commentary on. Number one, a chief evangelist can be incredibly valuable because, let's say, the marketing organization or sales organization, especially in a digital context, know a lot about, say, a target market. A chief evangelist may actually know the target market. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, I can know a lot about a rock star. I don't know the rock star, right? Yes. So that EQ and IQ combo could be super interesting with this nuance, powerful nuance that you can bring into the organization. I'd also wonder, and I'd like your take on this as well, if there's been a rise in chief evangelistic roles. You know, when I started out back in 2000, it was 200 cold calls a day. And so in some ways, that was the chief evangelist role, right? Because you had to create the awareness, then you had to build trust, confidence, convey information, and then have a conversation about a specific need and so forth. A lot of that's been taken out of the sales force, right? A lot of that's now, we just live in a different world. So am I making sense here? I like your input on both those two questions.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Those are both absolutely astute observations. And I guess to the first half of it, I'll just share that one of the people I interviewed first years ago now, almost 4 years ago, was Dave Isbitsky. He was the first employee in voice at Amazon. So when I interviewed him, he was chief evangelist for Alexa and Echo. And again, to this problem versus product thing, he wasn't out saying, Amazon voice products, you should use them. He was saying, hey, developers, what's really working for you in this environment so you can build apps to kind of make the ecosystem more robust. Hey, marketers inside companies, did you know that you could be doing all these different things with voice, and that if you set this thing up, people can say, hey, Alexa, and your product name, and you can serve them information and help them. So he was just building activity and awareness around it. He was the primary point of contact in both of those two communities. One of the things that he shared with me very specifically was, he still operated a little bit internally. He was still in some standing meetings. And, in a company like Amazon, probably one of the world's foremost companies in terms of gathering and effectively using data, right? Yeah. I think we could take that as a safe assumption. Yeah. He would, he's in a meeting where all these reports and all this quantifiable stuff. And he would just, after everyone was done sharing their data and talking about it, he would just share a story about something he had experienced in person or on a, in a group meeting or in a community setting yesterday or the week before or the month before. It would completely change. It wouldn't change the numbers. It would change the way people thought about and understood and talked about the numbers. And so it was very astute to talk about this bridge between what is easily measurable and all the immeasurable feelings and thoughts and decisions that drive those actual measurable outcomes. And so there's a bridge to be played there. And this idea of having the stories, understanding not just what people are saying, but how they're saying it. Are they saying it with more urgency than they were 6 months ago? Are they saying it with more fear than they were 6 months ago? Are they arguing about it from a different perspective than they were 6 months or a year ago? What is actually going on in the market and the real voice of customer? There are all these data points we collect, but I think an evangelist, when working across different functions in an organization, is in a very unique position to bring some of that together and to blend the human insights and the human emotion with data-based or data-driven decision-making. And so that's one go at that. And then to the other side, can you remind me where you want the other half of that question?
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking in terms of organizations used to have more direct human contact, because I know that human centricity is a big piece of your experience and what you care about. And you even have a podcast. I mean, you've got a lot of foot in that. Yeah. But 20 years ago, Salesforce's, there were a lot of cold calling. There's a lot of direct contact, conversational data, relationships, direct relationships. that now for a lot of organizations don't come in until much further down the funnel.
Very good. Yes, exactly.
And so lose a lot of that human centricity up front, right? And so I wanted to see if that the loss of that human centricity has aided the chief evangelist role, in the sense that, hey, we lost that, so we need some folks out there who have access to conversations that we will not get in a traditional structure.
Yes, thank you for resetting that for me, because there are a lot of thoughts in my mind right now. So I'll try to keep it tight. Yes, I think that is absolutely the case. For anyone that doesn't follow along, the buyer's journey is different than it was before. It's more nonlinear than ever. It's more self-driven than ever. And different people are engaging with the salesperson at different points because of one of the key ideas is information symmetry, right? The salesperson needed to be contacted earlier in the buying journey because there was information asymmetry, that the company and the salesperson had access to information that wasn't available to the population at large. Well, now that's balanced, and perhaps even balanced in favor of the buyer rather than the seller. The seller primarily knows, what the buyer brings them relative to competition, relative to the ecosystem at large. They're generally so focused on their own product that in some cases, a very well-educated buyer knows more about the market and the scene and the context around the decision than even the seller does. And I think that definitely raises the importance of an evangelist, a set of product evangelists, a team of technology evangelists, or perhaps a chief evangelist, for a couple of different reasons. One, point of view. Point of view is the key differentiator, and your ability to organize it, articulate it, bring it to life, carry it into the market, build a community around the concept to validate and shape and advance that point of view, to beat it up a little bit, to kind of battle test it a little bit, to understand where other people are and to determine whether or not your point of view is even differentiating at this point, is key, because every market tends toward commoditization over time. Even video, email, and video messaging, which most people on earth aren't doing, but I'm of the mind that pretty much everyone should. Anyone working professionally who wins through relationship, referral, communication, anyone who sells and serves, which is basically everybody, benefits, because we all know that we need to be doing in-person meetings or Zoom calls, Microsoft Teams, Google Meet, whatever. But we also know that we need the convenience of email, LinkedIn messages, Slack messages, text messages. It's asynchronous communication that tends to be faceless. So video messages take some of the richest elements of what we know we need, direct in-person, or next as good as in-person, the next best thing to in-person, which would be something like Zoom. We need the richness of that human communication, but we also need it in the convenient package of these other asynchronous channels, and video messages sit perfectly in between those. So the market doesn't know it has that problem. So there are two types of innovation that an evangelist can help with. One is the idea that solving a problem that people don't know they have. Right. And that's my long way around. We're solving a problem that people don't know that they have. You're entrusting some of your most important and valuable messages to an inferior means of communication relative to what's available today. Let's talk about that. And so our space, even though most people aren't doing it, and I think tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of people should be on a daily basis, even a space like ours that has so much growth and penetration to do into the markets that could benefit from it, is getting commoditized. We have a lot more competitors today than we did even 5 years ago. Oh, sure. A number of them are freemium. A number of them are in this race to the bottom on pricing, which I don't think is going to work out well for anybody. So in light of all of this changing stuff, we need a point of view about what the video messaging opportunity is, why people should pursue it, the best ways to do it, et cetera. And so if people are self-educating about what's going on in your market, where is your voice in that? How well does your marketing reflect the way that people are talking about your problem, not just your product? Because that includes your competitors and other solutions that you maybe don't even regard as direct competitors.
Right, and you add a personality to it, right? Your brand.
That's a key word. I called it point of view. I take point of view as the company's view of what's going on. And there is a personality aspect to it, but you're exactly right. It is there's something very unique about the human embodiment and the human expression of that point of view, of the ideas, of the best practices, that's more approachable than just another blog post or PDF.
That's exactly, and that's just more noise. And so, no, I get that. I love that. Let's pivot a little bit to your current opportunity, because you said that took some courage, and it got me curious. What? Let's talk about it. You've been there for 4 years. Give us some context.
So I kind of soft created this opportunity for fun on the side. We don't have time to get into all the details on that, but I ended up writing a blog post based on a 4-part guest series I did, interviewing 4 chief evangelists for someone else's podcast. And I wrote up 10 things I learned from 4 chief evangelists. The subtitle on it was, "If you're innovating, you must be evangelizing." And I offered that blog post to Steve, my friend and our CMO. I was like, "Hey man, I did this thing for fun on the side. I could put it on my personal website, or I could put it on the BombBomb website. What do you think?" He's like, and I qualified it. It's not about BombBomb. It's not about video messages, but it's got some really cool people and some really good brand names. Guy Kawasaki was one of them from Apple and Canva. David Spitsky, who I mentioned, was in there. And so, he was like, "Yeah, go ahead and put it in BombBomb." So I did. And then I shared it with him when I published it, and he read it, and a couple things happened. He was like, "Hey, this is really cool. That's super interesting. Well done. Good. Like, thanks for doing this. And thanks for, sharing it with BombBomb. But I actually, having read it, think we need a chief evangelist. And I think you're the right person for that job." Right. What do you think about that? And so for me, 2 things occurred to me. One, I was VP marketing. I had 2 teams reporting to me through 2 really awesome leaders. One of them was a marketing operations and marketing automation team, and the other one was content and social. And indirectly, I think that was like 8 or 9 people or 10 people total, through 2 leaders that were reporting to me. So I had, a traditional role. I had 2 important teams reporting to me. One of them, I had built all the content in social, and I felt equipped to support very well the marketing ops and marketing automation team. And that's something that everybody hires. Even in an economic downturn, there are companies looking for someone who can build, manage, and grow a marketing team and cost-effective marketing. You're not going to see a lot of positions out posted for chief evangelist. And so I was shedding those 2 teams and becoming an individual contributor inside the company. So that was the risk. It was like this known thing that's very well defined. I knew what I was doing. I had a great deal of expertise in one team, and I was still of significant value to the other team. It's the kind of thing that I could continue to learn and grow in. It's the kind of thing that every company is looking for and hiring all the time. The other one is ill-defined. No one knows exactly what the title means. There's a lot of, is it a thought leadership role? Is it a community building role? Is it a category design role? Is it some of all of those things? How is it different from traditional sales and marketing? Like, none of that is defined. That's why I started the Chief Evangelist podcast, is to talk to different people about it and get their origin story. So for me, it was leaving a known thing that has clear quantifiable value. Look at the different sizes of companies, approximately what the range of a VP marketing is in terms of compensation.
Sure.
Chief evangelist, all over the board. No one's really looking for it or hiring it.
I think it's donations. I think you take donations.
It's like, and what does success look like? Like all that stuff. It was just a big mystery zone. But I appreciated Steve's confidence in it. Our 2 co-founders, who I'd been working with for over a decade not quite a decade at that point, had trust in it and took that leap of faith with me that this would be useful to liberate me from some of the direct operational stuff in order to advance our broader message, mission, movement, perspective into the community at large by hosting and guesting on podcasts, by doing more presentations for our accounts and even people that we have no relationship with. Working to get on more stages, writing 2 books now, a variety of different things that the ROI is not super obvious. But I felt confident enough in that environment, surrounded by the people I am who were motivated in a similar way as me, that I took the leap.
You took the leap, right? And so you basically helped co-create this from scratch. It was an interesting time, right? You were creating a podcast from scratch in the arena, and then you were creating a role. It was like theory and reality kind of converging at the same time. So super, super interesting. And you're writing books, and you've got other activities. There's a lot going on. Last question for you. Do you think in a time where culture is really important, what role could chief evangelists play in shaping the culture? And I know you've hit on it a little bit with regards to directly on the business side, of the product side, of the innovation side. Let's just talk about the people side. What role do you think a chief evangelist can do for an organization who are looking, how can they infuse, what can they bring to their culture? How do they help shape the culture? But on a very human level, not on a technical. Can we talk about that a little bit? Because I think there's something there that my curiosity is piqued.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tie it to, so I started writing the first book called Rehumanize Your Business. And at a certain point, I realized I had to figure out how to bring it to market. And I started figuring out different paths that we could take. And some of them had costs associated with them. And I went to one of my longtime friends and team members. He's now our chief revenue officer, Jonathan Bolton. And I was like, hey, man, it's going to take me X number of hours, I think, to finish writing this book. Like, what do you think about that? And he said, that amount of your time, even if it was only to recruit and onboard and engage our employees, would be worth it.
Wow.
And I offer that to say, this idea of organizing your best stories, organizing your best practices, figuring out where the business, not just the business, but the movement, the market segment, the category, the philosophy and the practice are going over the next 3 to 5 years, to give someone the space to engage in ways that they deem appropriate, to constantly develop and advance that story internally and externally, I think is going to be really, really important. And so, one of the things so one of our two co-founders would refer to me as the historian or the librarian of the company. It's like, hey, if you want to know what we were doing in 2014 and why we were doing it that way, just go ask Ethan, right? Because I've been along this whole journey, and that was one of the criteria of the 4 people I interviewed in that initial podcast series, was that they were first in their like one of the early, their co-founders of their very early stage people. They have context for where this was when we started, why it was the way that it was, where we are today, how we got here, what happened competitively and in the market at large relative to human beings' habits and their interest in this problem and opportunity. Someone that has that through line and can turn that into a variety of different types of communication and engagement with your employees. Why should you join this company? Well, let's talk about that. And so our primary recruiter at BombBomb is an amazing evangelist. And I've told him this, he is an amazing evangelist because he's out there talking about to someone top of funnel, not a top of funnel buyer, but a top of funnel employee or potential employee. Yeah. And he was, and he gives that back to me. He's like, well, I'm happy to do it. I'm proud to do it. I believe in what we're doing. And you've given me some of the language and some of the ideas that helps me do it better. Right. When we hire X number of new employees within a given period of time, usually it's, as soon as we have 5 or 6 new people, we have this 2/3 of a day program, and I represent marketing in that. And I come in and I provide some context about what marketing is doing and why, but I spend the vast majority of that time doing this higher level storytelling and contextualizing, so they have a broader sense of purpose and a sense of direction. That I'm not a genius. I'm not the only person on earth who could do this, but I am the person inside this organization who's been entrusted, based on my experience and my expertise, my own deep passion and belief and vision that what we're doing is important and matters, my own academic approach to kind of what's going on around it and where this fits into people's lives and businesses. I've been entrusted to be someone to take the lead on that. And my goal, and any evangelist goal, should be to light up as many other people as possible to help advance that further, because I can only be in so many conversations. I can only be in so many Slack channels. I can only be on so many Zoom calls. At some point, you need to light other people up, and you need to be doing that internally with your own team members, that other people are the carriers of this kind of clarity, context, passion, joy, challenge, vision for where we're going. Every team in a company needs that. And not everyone is excitable enough or has the strengths to do that well. So you need to find those people so that can carry on inside the organization. And then, of course, you also need to be creating community outside the organization so that people are carrying it forward on behalf of you and the company. And in that way, then it becomes this true demand generation function to the degree that you can light people up outside the organization.
Ethan, I think that feels right to me. What does that feel like to you?
Yeah.
Does that feel good? Is there anything else you want to leave behind? I mean, I'm just processing it all, man. There's so much good content, calorie-rich content. A couple of things that came to mind for me was a chief evangelist really could be the CEO's right hand, right? Because one of the CEO's job is to be out there and telling a story, and a chief evangelist can force multiply a CEO's that aspect of a CEO's job. And the second thing that you talked about, which I loved around community, was what you're really talking about too is you're creating referral networks, right? You're creating these power. Chief evangelist starts creating these stories that people then evangelize, and it creates this referral effect. Is that true? Am I onto something here? I mean, I'm not. I mean, we're recording, but this is just you and I spitballing here. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think both of those are true. And the CEO may be the untitled chief evangelist.
Yeah.
Right. So typically early stage, a founder or a co-founder is by default the first evangelist. And in some cases, that is their strength area. And then they're going to build their team out so that they can continue to do that role.
Yeah.
But to your point, not all of them are that way. And so it's really helpful to have a right-hand person to really do that on their behalf. And so I think that is accurate. And then this other idea is, if you can build a big tent around the problem, this shared problem, and in our case, it's, faceless typed out text is insufficiently clear, it's insufficiently engaging, and it's insufficiently helpful to other people. How do we improve that? Video messaging is one way to do that. And when we start talking about that problem, we talk about the noise and pollution in the environment. How do you build trust quickly? How do you let people know that you're a real person? And that how do you verify that, right? Because we're all getting emails that we know a machine sent. We don't know if a person actually wrote them. We don't know if a person actually knows our name, even though it's inserted into the first line. And in some cases, they're spoofed. We don't even know that it's from the company it acts like it's from. We don't know if that link is safe to click. We don't know if that attachment is safe to download. How do we overcome those kind of human to human trust elements in this environment? Video messages can help with that. So the more we broaden the conversation and invite more people into it, we're creating awareness for the problem that we solve. And in that way, this is kind of like that rising tide. I want more of our competitors to be evangelizing the problem, because our biggest problem isn't that we're only getting X% market share. Our biggest problem is that the market is only X. We need the market to be 10X. And if we can preserve a tiny fraction of that market share and 10X the market along with our competitors and make this everyone knows they need a CRM.
That's right.
Nobody knows that they need a video messaging tool.
That's right. And that's why you have to evangelize the problem, right? Like you have to evangelize the problem. Yeah, no, this is great. I love where you're going.